My wife Marie looked good, really good. Almost edible if I were into eating something toxic. She approached the boardroom in the crowd of sycophants who purported to run the company, Acme Lelotide, although most of the running was so far beneath them that they would reach terminal velocity if they ever deigned to move down to that level of reality. Marie was dressed in an elegantly tailored bespoke suit, the skirt a little shorter and the top a little tighter than most business executives would probably go for, but that was Marie for you. She had shapely legs and a lovely body and used them to her advantage in any and every business meeting. But not for me, her sad, messed-up husband. Not anymore. The group of corpulent men and slim, hard-bodied assistants entered the boardroom and stared at me seated at the far end of the long, highly polished oak table, where the chairman, Mr. Max Collins the Almighty, would normally sit. On one side of me were Dallas and Holmes, on the other was Warburton. Together, we were the ambush party, the gang of four. We were reinforced by Beth, who was taking down every word in shorthand to back up the recording. Her pen was already busy. "Who the hell are you?" demanded Collins, known far and wide for his straight-talking, shoot-from-the-mouth style of management. "My name is Rob Bentley, gentlemen." As she heard my voice, my wife's head whipped around to stare at me. She had been hobnobbing with the marketing director, John Forbes-something or other, and hadn't seen me until that point. She hurried to my side. "Rob, what the hell are you doing here?" "Ah, Mrs. Bentley," I said cheerily. "You're the assistant marketing director, are you not?" After a long moment as she tried to work out what was going on, she said, "Of course I am. You know that. Now you need to leave, right now." "Why don't you take a seat, Mrs. Bentley? Although why an assistant marketing director is needed for a board meeting, I don't really understand. I would have thought you would be busy working, rather than taking an extraordinarily long lunch and then being involved in a meeting with the members of the board." "Rob," she hissed, "you're embarrassing me. You need to get out of here right now." "I think I'm much too late to embarrass you, Mrs. Bentley, and I need to be right here, right now. So take a seat, and let's see how the cards fall in this game. Rob, we can talk later at home. Now get out." She had been using a hissing whisper up until that point. Her last words rose dramatically in pitch and volume. Collins chipped in again. "Someone call security and get rid of these jerks, and tell them someone is going to be looking for a job as soon as I discover who let them in." Warburton spoke up. "An extraordinary meeting of shareholders is now in session, gentlemen. Security is aware of our presence and our right to be here." "Who the hell are you?" demanded Collins. I had no idea he was this much of a smooth talker. He had risen through the ranks from salesman to sales director to the chairman of the board by schmoozing and kissing ass and backstabbing. I'm not sure how he could have reached his position using such language. He must have let himself go a little. The size of his belly showed it wasn't the only thing he had let go. "Horace Warburton, senior partner of Warburton and Holmes." "Who the hell are they?" Collins was on a roll here. "The company auditors." "And you're here because why?" "I am here to ensure the extraordinary shareholders meeting is held in accordance with all the rules and regulations of the Companies Act as amended in 2006 and 2013. Look, I don't know who you jokers are, but whatever you're trying to sell, I'm not buying. So bug off. Get out of my building. I would remind you, Mr. Collins, that the building is owned by the company, which is in turn owned by the shareholders. I own the shareholders. Now get out, whoever you are, and stop that woman from writing things down." Beth looked up and gave him a sweet smile. Damn. Beth was so pretty, and when she smiled, "Down, boy! Not the time!" Then she poked her black-framed glasses further up her nose again, pushed an errant lock of her dark blonde hair back behind her ear, and my stomach flipped. Man, she was pretty. And those lips? She scribbled busily as Piper, the CFO, piped up. "Shareholders' meetings require notification and take place in a venue that allows all to attend if they wish." "This is an extraordinary shareholders' meeting, Mr. Piper. Beth, could you check to see if I mentioned that before? Yes, Mr. Warburton. You said an extraordinary meeting of shareholders is now in session, to which Mr. Collins replied, "Who the hell are you?" Wow, I loved it when Beth swore. As in, take me now. Okay. I had never heard her actually say that except in my fevered imagination. Although when she said it to other guys, it was pretty neat as well. I smiled at her. She smiled back. Did I mention I love that smile? Notices were sent out 2 days ago, gentlemen, as required. That's nonsense, said Crisp, the company secretary. I haven't received any notification of any such thing, and I would be the first to know. And yet our records show that the notification by email was received and acknowledged as read. Not by me, it wasn't, he stated smugly. Apparently you haven't been here for 2 days. I believe you've been on a team-building exercise. Strange that that would take place midweek, but you make the policies. I make the policies, averred Collins, and you can bug off. If I say it happens midweek, then that's how it is. Of course you're right, said Warburton smoothly. My audit clerks are going through those accounts and receipts for the team building days right now. I couldn't help chipping in. Ooh, have you been a bad putty cat? Fortune, Collins said. Get down there and sort it out. I'm not having any jerk wandering off the street and looking through our financial papers. I noticed Charlie Fortune, the chief financial officer, looked a little pale. You all right, Charlie? You look a little under the weather. I'm sure the team-building exercise was all above board and not just some excuse to stay in a 5-star hotel so you could all get angry and make love with your assistants. Rob! Dallas put his hand on my arm. What? I protested. I said I was sure it wasn't an excuse to do that. He gave me an old-fashioned look. Well, as the legal mind of the Gang of Four, he had every right to. Mr. Collins, said Warburton. His smooth method of delivery reminded me of the character Kobayashi in The Usual Suspects. Smooth and always just the right answer. You might want to keep Mr. Fortune on hand for the meeting. According to the share register, he owns significant shares and may wish to vote. He votes how I tell him to vote, stated Collins with no fear of contradiction. The board members and their assistants were all still gathered around the far end of the table. Gentlemen, Warburton said, please have a seat so we can get to the first order of business on the agenda. There is no agenda, shouted Collins. I have the agenda right here, I said, pushing a piece of paper forward, glad now Beth had talked me out of writing it in purple crayon, which had been my first instinct, this place being such a joke. I didn't get an agenda. This meeting is not valid or legal, protested Crisp. I nodded to Beth. She pulled her phone out of some magical place on her magical body. It had to have been magical, because the clothes she was wearing looked like she'd been dipped in liquid silk. They fit that closely. And they certainly didn't have any pockets or place to hide a phone. I would have known. Hey, I'm allowed to look, she murmured into the phone, then made it disappear and nodded to us. Collins was still muttering and threatening to have us thrown out, but I noticed the urgency had gone out of his dire warnings. A minute later, a young man in an expensive suit appeared carrying a laptop. Ah, Clark, if you would open it, Mr. Crisp will enter his password. The man opened it and put it in front of the skinny company secretary, who stared at it, stretched a hand out to the keyboard, and then paused. Mr. Crisp, said Dallas, I suggest you do not try to do anything silly. Mr. Clark would be forced to prevent that from happening, which could be unfortunate. Everybody in the room was abruptly aware that Mr. Clark was suddenly a lot more threatening than an audit clerk should seem, all without moving a muscle, which was quite frankly awesome. Crisp entered his password and opened his emails. When he went a little grayer and began to sweat, I knew he'd found the notice. The notification was also posted on the company bulletin board as required and in the national newspapers, none of which was completely necessary as we also have written agreement to short notice. Okay, the email was bogus. A friend of mine had done some jaggery pokey on it and managed to make the date and time appear to be 2 days ago instead of 2 hours, and to also make it seem to have been read and acknowledged. Don't ask me how, I just have friends. But the notice board thing was correct, as was the newspaper notice. I didn't mention that the notice was fairly small and appeared among the personal ads in the back of a newspaper with the smallest national circulation we could find, certainly not one that would normally be read by businessmen. The notice board was in the factory canteen of a small branch of the company, in Scotland. It had taken some deep thought to come up with that one. It was teetering right on the edge, but it was legal. Warburton tapped the table. Right. If you gentlemen are comfortable standing around, then we can begin. Mr. Bentley, if you would read the first item on the agenda. I rose to my feet, adjusted my jacket, and fastened the lowest button. My suit was cheap as chips, but it followed the same general pattern as all the expensive ones. Then I adjusted my tie and cleared my throat. All eyes followed my every move. Even Marie, although she seemed to not want to look at me, she was so furious. Thank you, Mr. Warburton. Gentlemen, the first item on the agenda is a motion of no confidence in the board of this company, and that all members of said board be replaced with immediate effect. There was a moment's silence, and then an uproar broke out that would have suited any bar during a cup final game. Some were laughing like donkeys, others were roaring like bears, and some were squealing like pigs. So perhaps it would have been better suited to any bar during a showing of Animal Farm. My wife now appeared to be so embarrassed at my behavior that she couldn't look at me. She was slumped in a seat, shrinking right down in the hope that nobody would notice her. Any discussion of item 1, gentlemen? What's to discuss? Roared Collins. He looked squarely at me. I know you. You're Bentley's husband, aren't you? The brickie. Perhaps instead of just using your muscles, you should have used your brain and taken some advice from her. She knows what she's doing, and she's really good at it too. He waggled his eyebrows suggestively as looked around the room at his colleagues, who followed his lead and took seats at the table, smirking at Marie and me in turn. If her straying had been unnoticed before now, it was no longer any mystery. She had been outed. Red-faced and a little tearful, she shrank even lower in her chair. You morons may have set this up, but you have obviously not got the faintest idea of how a business works. This is a limited company with shares that are sold on the stock market, not some turkey farm out beyond the M25. You don't get any say in the running of this business. My business. Now be a good little fool and get lost. Get out of my face. You were amusing with all your talk of agendas, but now you're just angering me off. Warburton didn't turn a hair. Any other discussion on the first item on the agenda? When all he got was sneers and laughter from all 12 board members and sniggers and disdain from the assistants that stood behind them, he held his silence for a moment. Then this item is put to the vote on the motion that all the board members of Acme Limited be sacked and replaced with immediate effect. All in favor? I raised my hand. You? Sneered Collins. You have shares? I nodded, and Marie looked at me in surprise. How many? Collins asked. 100 shares, I said. Bought and paid for. Marie looked down at her lap again. The humiliation of her being associated with me in any way was perfectly clear. 100 shares was not even 1/100th of 1%. I was the village idiot in the finest university in the land, compared to the businessmen she associated with daily. She was an acolyte at their feet, eager to learn all she could from the masters, whereas I wasn't even smart enough to be allowed to empty the chamber pots. I saw her slip her wedding ring off her finger and put it in her pocket. Seeing that didn't make me sad, just surprised at how little it bothered me. I thought I would at least care a little. Beth smiled at me, and I wrinkled my nose at her in return. A little bunny nose. She liked that, and her smile grew wider. Collins was howling with laughter. 100 shares? What's that worth? £2? Warburton continued unruffled. Those against the motion? The laughter continued. Then if there are no votes against... Piper suddenly sobered up. I vote against." "What?" Collins guffawed, wiping his eyes. "Are you taking this seriously?" The vote was about to go against us. He voted his 100 shares, but nobody was voting against him. Collins suddenly sobered up and stared at me, his bushy eyebrows drawn low over his eyes as he frowned. "You tricky little weasel. You planned this. You planned this all the time. And you almost got us to fall into your trap, laughing all the way. Very clever. Well, I own 83 million shares, and I vote against this proposal. Now get the hell out of here and take your lackeys with you. And if you ever enter this building again, I'll have you locked up so tight your arse will squeak every time you breathe." Suddenly, there was a small forest of raised hands voting against the motion. Things were not looking so good for the away team. Warburton noted down each vote against the proposal, checking them against the share register to see how many shares each of them possessed. "That is a total of just under 242 million shares against the proposal. 27.62% of all shares issued vote against the proposal. The proposal is accepted." "Get out of my building, you little piece of—" "What do you mean accepted?" Crisp was standing and shouting at Warburton. "Wait, what?" gasped Collins. "I thought he meant rejected." "No, Mr. Collins. My meaning was clear. I meant accepted. The motion has passed." The hubbub now was full of protest and denial, rather than laughter and hooting and that other monkey stuff they had been doing up until now. "Look, Warrington, or whatever your name is, you can't cheat these things. You saying something is so doesn't just make it happen." "Of course it doesn't, Mr. Collins. I am as trained in business procedure as, well, actually more than any of you. I know exactly what I am saying." "Okay, then say it in plain English, because right now, you're talking out of your back." "Mr. Collins, the numbers are very simple. 27.62% of the shares, those owned by the people at this table, voted to reject the motion. 58.98% of the shares voted to accept the motion. Therefore, the motion is passed. I don't understand how to make it any clearer." "What?" asked Collins. "How do you get 58% out of 100 shares?" "You don't, Mr. Collins. You don't even get 1% out of 100 shares. How could you? This is a public company, traded on the stock exchange, as you said. There are almost 1 billion shares all told. So where does the 58% come from?" I stood up again. "It comes from proxies, which give me the right to vote their shares. And I vote to throw the lot of you perverted thieving hogs out on the street, which I just did." Marie was now staring at me with wide eyes. How the hell did I know about things like proxies? I was a builder, not a financier. Where would I have even heard the word? Collins was staring at me, wide-eyed. "You don't have that many proxies, you can't. It's impossible." "Ah, but I do, Collins. I simply asked for them and they gave them to me. For this one meeting. For one day. That would have cost you millions." "No. Just finding the right people to talk to. And most of them really don't like you." It had taken weeks to do it. Ever since the moment, I had overheard 2 of the board members talking in the executive toilets while I had been up in the ceiling trying to find the source of a leak. Marie had arranged the job as a fob to her feelings of guilt, I think. "That Bentley woman is so fine." One of them, I think it was Murray, sales director. Only one Bentley in my town had that reputation, so I knew who they were talking about. Of course, the fact that she was working 1 floor down might have given it away as well. "You think Collins is going to share her ass on the team building this time?" asked the other. "I think it might have been Marie's immediate boss. He likes to have her tucked under his wing where he can pork her to his heart's content. Although it's been over 2 years now, so he may have gotten tired of her body by now. Perhaps he'll share this year. I thought he was going to be generous at the Christmas party, but the idiot wasn't going for it. He had her under the table doing things for him, even while her husband was looking for her. Selfish cheat." "Tucked under his fat gut, you mean? I'm surprised he hasn't ironed her flat by now." I heard the sound of laughter and then two zips and the door opening and closing as they left. "Wash your hands, you unsavory pigs," I called. My head was spinning and I wondered how much it would hurt if I toppled sideways and fell through the false ceiling. Part of me wished it would happen. Maybe it would make the hurt inside less. Now, it all made sense. Oh, I knew she'd been cheating for a while now. A look in her eyes to an innocent question from me had raised suspicion. And when that gets its dander up, it doesn't go back down easily. I had noticed slight changes in dress, especially underwear. The phone calls were carefully taken in the other room. Love time had become scarcer, then too often, then scarcer again. All the classic signs. But I had been looking for a cheating partner amongst our circle of friends. I mean, Marie is a fox. All long black hair and slinky curves no matter which side you viewed her from. And always as fine as it comes, with hair, makeup, and clothes all from the finest and most expensive places. Marie did not stint when it came to Marie. That was for sure. So she would prowl up, never down. Intimacy with her was fine as well, although there was always a treacherous little thought within me after a bout of good loving that wondered if her responses to me had come from an IKEA instruction booklet. Do this and then turn it over and screw that, and then pound that, and hope there are no bits left over. In other words, a well-learned way of having really good intimacy rather than a natural progression of desire. I had always felt a little treacherous for thinking that. I never considered that treachery would come from her. So, I had been looking at the wrong page in the cheating partner catalog. I had imagined her with a big, fine-looking, flashy guy with an enormous knob. Not a little yapping terrier with a sense of self-importance only slightly bigger than his belly. Over 2 years then, since that vulgar old man had climbed onto her, using his weight to dominate her. For a moment I wondered if he was any better at it than me, or if he had any kind of advantage. Then, still perched in the rafters, I started to chuckle at the absurdity of it, how he'd even manage with that massive gut in the way. Sadly, my chuckles turned into tears, and I wept for a while at my lost love. The final end of a marriage, even one in its terminal stages, will do that to you. I sniffled for a while, feeling sorry for myself. Then I got angry instead and thought of murder-suicide, then just murder, and then finally downgraded it to maybe acid washing his car. Finally, I put the stupid stuff away and began to think properly. I spoke to a friend who gave me a couple of little plastic things and told me what to do, which I carefully wrote down. The next day, I walked back into the building with my toolkit and began to search for that pesky drip once more, pausing only to plug the plastic things into unattended laptops and press the buttons in the order I had written on my list. While I waited, I whistled loudly and banged about the office, swearing about the leak and carefully searching everywhere. Always best to hide stuff in plain sight. Finally, I pulled the plastic things out again and walked out again, still whistling. It's amazing the variety of people you meet when you build houses for them. And if you're lucky, how many good friends you can make if you treat them fairly, with respect and humor. Another friend analyzed the data from the plastic things. That took me on a roundabout journey to Mr. Warburton, who introduced me to Dallas and Holmes. A long round-table discussion in a bar gave me the answer to my problem, although the method had to be on me. They couldn't do more than gently hint as to what that might be. So in the end, I looked up the person I needed to ask and went and asked her. I explained the situation, and she even looked sympathetic. I then showed her what the data had said, and she looked very troubled instead. And when I told her of my plan, she laughed and gave me what I needed. She was in charge of a large pension fund and worried that Acme's current board would crash the stock price, with her having invested large amounts in their shares. She even gave me an introduction to the next person I should talk to, and somehow, by explaining carefully what and how and when and why, almost every person on the list of hedge funds, pensions, mutual funds, and bank investments gave me another part of the solution, each for different reasons. Some did it for profit, And there would be a lot of that as they now knew the timing. Some did it for pleasure, hating Max Collins almost as much as I did. Some did it just out of spite, and some did it for no apparent reason other than the story I told them. Astonishingly, none of them told anyone important, and so it remained off the radar. And I ended up with the proxies for more than half a quoted company. I had asked for one meeting, and they had given it to me for a whole day. That day was today. "You're all fired," I said. "Beth, if you would alert security, so they can be ready to escort each and every one of these off the premises after the meeting." Beth actually giggled this time, made huge googly eyes at me from behind her glasses, and did her magic with the phone again. Security guards appeared within a minute, looming large outside the boardroom door. Nobody said a word, apart from a panicked whisper now and again. I noticed that the smarter assistants had moved back from their bosses a little, wanting a degree of separation now that their meal tickets were out of a job. Marie watched me as if I was going to grow fangs at any moment. I enjoyed that. A little turnabout was a good appetizer, because I still had a whole lot of main course left to go. "What's next on the agenda, Mr. Warburton?" I asked. Oh, I knew what was next. I'd written the damn thing. But I enjoyed the formality of it all. Item 2 on the agenda. A motion that no so-called golden parachutes be offered to any previous members of the board of Acme Limited votes for. I raised my hand with a huge smile. Votes against? The little forest of hands grew again. Motion accepted. You can't do that. I have a contract. Crisp was getting daring in his desperation. Normally he crept around, head down and hands clasped as if praying. Except what he was actually doing was praying. On the younger men in the company, either bribing or coercing them for favors. The little plastic things had also discovered that, from a couple of complaints that had been brought against him by desperate staff members, but later dismissed as mischief complaints by the board. You do indeed, Crispy, you nasty little jock rash, you. However, your contract, like everyone else's, depends on the profit ratios over the previous years. Isn't that right, Charlie? Fortune nodded. The profit ratio is in line with our targets, so there will be no problem fulfilling our contracted aims. Except if somebody has been fiddling the books. Isn't that right as well, Charlie? Fiddling the depreciation figures? Charlie's face went so white as to be almost transparent. That's right, not knocking depreciation off plant and machinery, vehicles, even buildings, ready to load it into the next year. Oh, Charlie, cheating the tax man while trying to sell the company out from under the shareholders for very personal gain. Tut, tut. Naughty board members. The naughty board members all sprang to deny that they were personally involved, especially when Mr. Dallas introduced himself as senior counsel for Her Majesty's Customs and Excise. The taxman does not cometh, he's here. Happily, as does any man righteously worthy in his own job, Dallas told them all that they were under investigation, and any indication that one or two of them might wish to leave for fonder climes would be frowned upon severely, and result in their immediate incarceration while investigations continued. It seemed that not only were the books being audited by Warburton's enthusiastic young men and women, but they were also under the microscope by Dallas's older and grayer but equally diligent bloodhounds, and we all know what the taxman's like when he wants to have a really good close look at you. Item 3, continued Warburton, when the fuss and excitement had died down to gloom and despondency. Motion that the shareholders appoint Mr. Holmes and his partnership to investigate and criminally prosecute any malfeasance, malpractice, embezzlement, and self-enrichment at a cost to the shareholders. As an aside to me, he said, Rob, you know malfeasance only applies to public officials. Yeah, but it's such a good word, I said. Most people have never heard of it, so I thought I'd sling it in there and see if it hits anything. Warburton almost smiled at that, but auditors do not smile. I think it's because they have to deal with taxmen so often. Votes for the motion? I raised my hand dutifully. Votes against? Only half of them bothered to raise a hand. The motion is carried. Holmes stood up. Thank you, Mr. Warburton. My name is John Holmes of Hudson, Watson and Holmes, and I am as of now acting as legal counsel for the corporation until a new board is put in place. I and my investigators will be examining every piece of paper, every single bit of data, and every member of staff to establish what levels of theft, embezzlement, fraud, and malfeasance. He nodded to me, and I gave a little bow in return. Malfeasance have occurred in this company. The company will then press for criminal prosecution for every occurrence that has taken place above the value of one paperclip. Witness testimony to such practices will be taken favorably into account. Please, do not hurt yourself in the rush to my offices on the second floor where such interviews will take place. He sat down again, and Warburton picked up the agenda again. Oh, come on, Rob. I can't say this. You want this put into the public record? Seriously? I nodded firmly. He sighed. Very well. The motion is that the board members will apologize personally, individually, and collectively to Mr. Bentley for having an affair with his wife, individually, in gangs and in trains, over the last 2 years. That Mrs. Bentley will have a full medical examination for every virus, bacteria, parasite, and... what's that word? I leaned over and looked. Toadstool. Seriously? And toadstool growing there with the aim to have them expunged. This to happen before she takes up her new duties as chairman of the board. Votes for? My hand shot up enthusiastically as I looked at Marie. Her mouth was open and she kept licking her lips as if her mouth was really, really dry. It wasn't pretty. Her eyes seemed to have sunk and dulled, darting everywhere but at me. Her shoulders were hunched in on herself and her arms were crossed over her chest. Clearly she expected someone to take a swing at her. Not me. I wouldn't touch her, not even with my worst enemy's dick, never mind a barge pole. A few people said they were sorry. Collectively, you morons. That means all together. Now 1, 2, 3. We're sorry, Mr. Bentley. No. There are some in the back who aren't putting an effort into it. Come on, I want enthusiasm. It was so surreal I almost let myself collapse with laughter. Here were these captains of industry, giants among giants, the business elite, all chanting like second-year school children how sorry they were that they had all an affair with my wife. I made the mistake of looking at Beth, who was giggling hopelessly with her back to the choristers, her fist pressed against her mouth to try and stifle the noise. I had to end this travesty. Okay, last try. Now everyone, I want feeling, I want rhythm, I want rhyme, I want volume set at 11. Jazz hands wouldn't hurt either. At that, Beth started to hiccup. She was laughing so hard. And for some weird reason, those jerk-off artists did exactly as I asked. I filmed it on my phone for posterity. I then informed them that all details of their nasty little orgiastic affairs with their assistants and my wife had been hand-delivered by couriers to their wives. And finally, I told them all to bug off. When they had left, pushing each other in their rush to get away from me and the nightmare their lives had become, I sighed and sat down. The other 3 members of the gang of 4 had followed the rush in a more sedate fashion after Holmes got a dazed Marie to sign the contract for her CEO position, so we were almost alone. Beth cupped my chin in her small hand. Are you all right? Her voice was a low contralto and did its usual number on my spine in the way of shivers. I nodded. It's almost over, she whispered. Get your hands off my husband. Marie had apparently woken out of her daze with a vengeance. I stared at my imminent ex-wife in astonishment. What the hell was she thinking? I had just humiliated and embarrassed her to the nth degree, almost to the point of going over the top and mirroring it somehow on myself. I knew I had gone too far, way too far. I mean, she was completely unfaithful to me, but I had gone nuclear on her in return. Not only had I made her lovers dance to my tune like a Punch and Judy show, but she was now written into the legal minutes of a public corporation, which would be available to any shareholder to read, and she was probably going to get hit with a dozen mentions in divorces and possibly sued as well. And now she wanted to get jealous. Was she completely insane? Beth spun around. The ready smile had gone, and I could almost hear the claws slide out. I had met the beautiful Beth Wilson 2 years earlier when I had built a sweet little cottage for her and her fiancé. It was some of my best work. Outside was rustic, the whole thatched roof, picket fence, and thoroughly landscaped exterior with a very carefully managed wildflower garden. A dichotomy, I know. Inside was a marvel of modern engineering, with Italian ingenuity allowing almost everything to fold up inside itself and slide away into walls and cupboards. Beth was a short arse, so there were steps built in all over the kitchen, and any other place there was a high cupboard. They all folded in and around and up and away as well. Half the time I expected the stuff to disappear up its own arse. It was absolutely ingenious. Then her fiancé was killed in a stupid road accident. A truck wheel not tightened properly, the wheel breaking away suddenly at high speed on the motorway, the forces of a heavy load on it bouncing it incredibly high into the air. When it came down, the little sports car he was in on the other side of the median never stood a chance, and neither did he. Another second, and it would have bounced behind his car, or a second slower, and it would have bounced in front, and he'd have been clear. Instead, it landed right in his lap. And the wheel of an 18-wheeler is a big mother. Very big. I went to the funeral, and later when she had calmed slightly, offered to finish the cottage at no cost, and then to sell it for her if she wanted it that way. Instead, in her grief, she decided to finish and live in it, almost as a monument to her lost love. She was there almost every day, working through her loss. Of course, I was also there, and I helped where I could. Gradually, her plans changed, wanting to make the cottage more of a home than the show house it had originally been designed as, a house that would reflect the style they felt they had, rather than the comfort they felt with each other. So we would discuss, redesign, improvise, start over, argue, sulk, and apologize, and then redesign it all again. Over the 6 months it took to finally complete the house to an astonishingly high degree of finish, we became really good friends. No more than that, but no less either. She would tell me her plans to go back to university and finish her degree before heading out into the wide world of medicine, and I would respond by telling her my dreams of buying a boat and slowly heading out into the wide world of, well, the wide world, sailing around, living in various places on a whim. So, of course, when I first suspected that Marie was cheating on me, she was the second person to know, and in the same way, I helped her get through her grief. She helped me through mine. She was a shoulder to cry on, someone to vent my anger with, and someone to talk sense into me when I wanted to stab my wife in the face, always there when I needed her most. So, of course, like the idiot I am, as time went by with no resolution of my constant, almost certain but never proven suspicions of my wife's infidelity, I fell out of love with Marie and later fell into love with Beth. They were complete contrasts, and that probably made it easier for me to some degree. Where Marie was tall and slim and sophisticated, Beth was short, really short, and curvy and bubbling with laughter. Marie had long dark hair and blue eyes. Beth had short blonde hair and brown eyes. Marie had a drive to succeed in everything, while Beth had the drive to enjoy life to the full. Marie was manipulative. Beth was a companion. Marie was a cheating woman who, it seemed, was happy to have intimacy with anyone and everyone on her way to the top, while I had, as far as I could tell, been the only constant man in Beth's life since her fiancé died. Marie was my cheating wife. Beth was my constant friend, my best friend. And I was going to ruin it because of falling in love with her. Beth had helped me plan this day, first as a fun thought project and then as a way to help me reach closure. I'm not sure she ever thought I would actually go through with it, but even when it happened, she was determined to stand by me and see it through. So she became my secretary for the day. Marie seemed to think it was more than it was, however. "I've been watching you, rich snob. I know who you are and where you come from," Marie screamed. "You think you can buy everything? Do you think you can buy my husband? Well, I've got news for you." Her hand slapped at Beth's face, who ducked and kicked her on the shin. Marie collapsed, rubbing at her leg. "Cheater!" "Better than being a homewrecker," Beth came back. Now that I was fairly certain a catfight wasn't in the offing, I stepped in. I had a scar on the back of my neck to prove that getting between two enraged women was a really bad idea, so I didn't do that anymore. If two or more women were so mad at each other that they had to resort to violence, they could sort themselves out, and I would pick up the pieces when they were too tired to hurt me. "Marie, you've been messing around with a whole crowd of people for 2 years now. It's over." "Please don't say that, Rob. You love me." I put my hands up defensively. No. There's a past tense on that. I loved you. Hear the D at the end? But you took it out of me. So now I don't. "Oh, please," she said. "You made me chairman. You gave me the best gift ever. Of course you love me. And I'll never cheat again. Ever." "I give her a week. At the outside," said Beth in an aside to me. I had to agree. "It doesn't matter how long. Tomorrow or never. It doesn't matter. We are no longer together. We will never, ever be together again. I overheard 2 of your buddies talking about how long you'd been the company's cheating asset. Did you really do that for him under the table at the Christmas party while I was running around trying to find you?" Beth stared at me and put her hand on my arm. "Jesus! Really? I take it back. Not a week then. Maybe a day. Although even then I wouldn't be confident." "Oh, come on. You knew that I was doing it for my promotion. You didn't mind." Marie was in tears. "What are you talking about? I never actually knew you were cheating until 6 weeks ago. I suspected, but I never had any proof." "No, you knew. You had to know. You just didn't care." "How was I supposed to know? I loved you. I trusted you not to jump into bed with every man who crossed your path. But you never said anything. You didn't care." "Bug off, Marie," Beth butted in. "That's nonsense, plain and simple. You're just trying to guilt him. You were a deceitful woman sneaking around, but doing it where he could never catch you. You did it in your world, a world where he couldn't easily go. He didn't know anything, and that doesn't make him stupid. It just makes you a really sneaky, cheating woman." Says the wealthy snob who couldn't accept her fiancé died and so had to go out and find a replacement, even a second-hand one. All those little changes that just had to be made in that wedding cake house of yours. You tried to hog-tie him with cash. Face it. Beth stared at me, tears in her eyes. "I never. That wasn't it. I didn't." "Yeah, you didn't tell him you were Little Miss Diamonds and Pearls from a golden family? Why not? Afraid he'd see through you?" Beth turned, and I just knew she was going to run. And if she ran, I might never get her back. I grabbed her hand, swung her in, and held her to me. "Hey," I whispered as she sobbed against my chest. "She's looking for a weakness to try and split us up and break our friendship apart. It's not going to happen. I don't care whether you have a couple of quid or not. I really don't. You are my best friend. But this is what she does. It's who she is. She manipulates reality. Why do you think I could never prove her infidelity? She could spin anyone around and get them to believe black was white." I turned back to Marie, who was watching us with triumph in her eyes. "Marie, you had better shut that big trap of yours right now, or the next words out of it will be, 'Do you want fries with that?' I gave you that CEO position, but if you don't shut up right now, I swear I will take it away from you again. Hell, I'll give it to Beth instead. She's a great little organizer." I said that Beth was short. She's 5'0" in her shoes. So when she looks up at me, she really does that. And now she was looking up at me with alarm behind the tears. She wanted that position no more than I did. Marie finally heard the truth in my voice. She didn't want to lose the position of chairman and knew that I had the proxies for the whole day. I could call everyone back and simply change the agenda so she was fired along with the rest of them. "Why did you give me the position if you hate me?" "Marie, I don't hate you. I did, but I don't hate you anymore. I used to love you, but I don't feel that anymore either. Do you want to know why you got the job? Let me tell you. 6 weeks ago, when I started planning this day out, I thought about us divorced. If you got fired, I would have to pay you alimony. I would have to pay you so that you could mess around and exercise your body to your heart's content. I would end up paying you so you could do that. I couldn't accept that. So I decided if I promoted you, maybe you would end up paying me instead. And then I thought how delightful it would be if I could spend all day messing while you worked hard to support my pleasure. Oh, that would be so good. That would be karma. I mean, I have a heart condition, so I couldn't work anymore. Beth looked up at me with fear in her eyes. I held her face between my hands, and as gently as I could, I brushed away the tracks of her tears with my thumbs. I don't, but I could easily get a certificate that says I do. I have friends in many strange places. She threw her arms around me, weeping. I'm sorry, she said in a muffled voice, with her face buried against my chest, but I don't want to be your best friend anymore. Ha, said Marie. I shot her a look with so much venom in it that she actually moved back a few feet. I waved a hand at her and she retreated to the other side of the room. Really? I asked Beth. She nodded, and I felt my body just sag and my arms drop to my sides. I felt so tired. I was so tired of my emotions just driving me from place to place, with hope and fear mixing like oil and water and never quite making it. I'm so sorry, I said. I never meant to fall in love with you. I just wanted you to be my best friend. It just happened. I'm so sorry I ruined everything. She was staring up at me, her brown eyes huge. You fell in love with me? Yes, of course. And I'm sorry that it ruined our friendship. You fell in love with me? She asked again. Hell, it seemed I had overstepped the mark in a big way. I should have just kept it contained. I nodded, feeling a main course of misery with a nice big side order of creeping loneliness. Why did she keep asking me the same question? I don't want to be your best friend, she said carefully, and I nodded my acceptance of that fact. I want to be your best love, your best life, your best wife. And okay, your best friend as well, but the others first. Huh? I couldn't seem to place what she said in the right order. Rob Bentley, will you marry me? Okay, but you have to get on your knee to ask first. Not a very funny comeback, but if we were going to joke around, it would have to do. I was too drained to get really cute. She got down on one knee. Rob, will you marry me? Can't hear you now. You'll have to come closer again. I tried to smile, but joking about marriage wasn't in the best of taste in my book. Not right then, maybe later. She got to her feet, and the next thing I knew, her arms were around my neck. I stumbled backward a few paces. I am going to ask you one last time, Rob. Just once more. I mean it. Almost. Maybe. Now listen, and listen well. I love you, and you said you love me. So will you marry me? You're not joking? I asked. No, of course not. What? You think I ask guys to marry me for a joke? Why would you think that? I'm not very lucky, I replied. Well, say yes, and I promise you'll get very lucky as soon as I can get you back to the house. Yes, I replied. She kissed me then for the first time, knocking her glasses askew in her passion. I know, everything was screwed up, and in the wrong order. I didn't care. She tasted sunlight, roses, vanilla, autumn mists, warm sand at the beach, chocolate, everything that was ever good in my sad, messed-up life. Ha! I knew it! Came a muted screech from the far side of the boardroom. Bug off, Marie, Beth and I said at the same time, and she did. So maybe I wasn't so unlucky after all. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.